Have you ever felt like you were standing still while everything around you was falling apart? The deals, the deadlines, the doubt. Like you're expected to be the rock, while inside you're barely holding the pieces together. Most people never see it. They see the suit, the strategy, the sharp decisions, but they don't see the 2 a.m. silence, the weight of leading when you're not sure who's leading you. Now imagine this. Amidst the noise, the chaos, the pressure, you can still be a peaceful harbor. Still, clear, unshakable. That isn't fantasy. That's what happens when you stop trying to control everything outside and start mastering everything within. As Epictetus said, some things are up to us and some things are not. In today's video, we're diving into 10 Stoic principles that can help you lead through the storm, not by resisting it, but by becoming the kind of leader no storm can touch. But before we begin, tell me in the comments, what's one storm you're facing right now that you wish you could navigate with more calm? Because sometimes just naming it is the first act of power. Now, let's begin. Number 1, guard your mind. Let me ask you something real. When was the last time you sat alone, no phone, no Slack, no podcasts, and just let yourself think? Not about the next meeting, not about the numbers. Just you, your thoughts, your instincts, your truth. If that question makes you a little uncomfortable, you're not alone. Because most leaders today, they're not avoiding silence, they're running from it. But here's the paradox. In business, in leadership, in high-stakes decision-making, silence is where the signal lives. When your world gets loud, team fires, endless notifications, back-to-back calls, it's easy to confuse activity with progress. You move faster, but drift further. You reply quicker, but with less conviction. That's why the Stoics didn't avoid silence, they sought it. Not as a retreat, but as a recalibration. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." And in today's hyper-connected world, that retreat isn't a vacation, it's a daily necessity. When Satya Nadella took over Microsoft, he didn't just pivot strategy. He re-centered the company's mindset. He introduced nonviolent communication workshops, encouraged mindful leadership, and reclaimed the narrative of Microsoft as a mission-driven culture, not just a tech giant. Why does that matter? Because your company will only rise to the level of clarity and composure you bring to it. And when your mind is hijacked by urgency, comparison, and outside opinions, you stop leading and start reacting. Here's the truth. No one says out loud, as a leader, your most valuable asset isn't your product, your Rolodex, or your capital. It's your mental sovereignty. Guard it ruthlessly. That might mean turning down the noise and turning up time for solitude. Catching yourself mid-rumination and asking, is this thought helpful or hijacked? Letting go of that one critic who's still renting space in your head, interest-free. Because when you reclaim your internal narrative, you reclaim your external influence. And that's where real leadership begins. If this spoke to you, I'd love to hear. When was the moment you stopped reacting and started reclaiming your story? Drop it in the comments. Your experience might just be the one that helps someone else find their clarity too. Number 2, live by principles. Most people think leadership is about being the smartest person in the room, the one with the data, the strategy, the edge. But here's what they miss, and often don't realize until it's too late. It's not intelligence that holds your team together during pressure. It's integrity. It's who you are when no one's watching. Marcus Aurelius captured this timeless truth when he said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. And yet, most leaders don't fall because they lack skill. They fall because, somewhere along the line, they compromise the principles that once made them powerful. I remember a founder of a fast-scaling health tech company. They had just hit Series C. He was praised in the press. Growth looked unstoppable. But behind closed doors, his team was exhausted, burning out under unrealistic demands. He knew it. But the investors wanted speed, not sustainability. So he made a call, push through. Then came the turnover, the PR missteps, the lost trust, not because he made a bad business decision, but because he abandoned the values that built the company in the first place. Eventually, he paused, rewrote the culture manifesto, slowed growth to rebuild alignment. They lost a few big investors, but gained something far more powerful: internal coherence and long-term momentum. You see it too in people like Paul Polman, former CEO of Unilever. He refused to bow to quarterly earnings demands, choosing instead to lead with environmental and social impact. He was mocked at first, then watched his brand, culture, and reputation skyrocket. Because when you stand for something bigger, people lean in. Stoicism teaches that living in accordance with nature, your nature, isn't idealism. It's clarity, it's strength. It's what keeps your decisions clean when the world gets messy. Because without principle, success is just velocity. But with it, leadership becomes direction. So let me ask you, what's one higher principle you've chosen to lead by, even when it came at a cost? Drop it below. You never know who's waiting to be reminded that purpose is still the most powerful strategy in business. Number 3, own your identity. You ever sit in a room and realize someone's talking about you, just not to you? They don't confront you directly. They whisper. They imply. And suddenly, you're not leading the narrative anymore. You're defending it. It's one of the most quietly dangerous dynamics in leadership, because reputation isn't just built by what you say. It's shaped by what others say when you're not in the room. Stoicism offers a different approach. Epictetus once said, "If someone speaks ill of you, live so that no one will believe it." That isn't passive, it's powerful. It means letting your character outpace the rumors, your consistency outshine the noise. When Howard Schultz returned to Starbucks, there were critics everywhere. Investors doubted him. The press painted him as outdated. But instead of defending himself, he rebuilt the foundation, focused on the customer experience, retrained employees, and restored brand dignity. He didn't fight the gossip. He made it irrelevant. It's the same mindset Satya Nadella brought to Microsoft. Rather than spend time countering his predecessor's legacy, he let his culture change, speak for itself. He wasn't louder, he was clearer. This is the Stoic's edge. You stop trying to win every conversation. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You lead with presence, not performance. For modern leaders, this might mean staying composed in boardroom drama, or not reacting when a former partner spins their version of the story. It's not about staying silent, it's about speaking through your results, your values, your record. The world will always have something to say, but when you show up again and again, rooted in who you are, that becomes your narrative. So tell me this, have you ever had to reclaim your reputation by simply staying the course? I'd love to hear your story, because sometimes the strongest message is the one you don't have to explain. Number 4, lead with purpose. Let me guess. You've been told to stay calm under pressure, but no one ever taught you how or what it really takes when the stakes are high, reputations are on the line, and everyone's looking at you for the next move. Here's the truth. Most leaders don't break because of the pressure itself. They break because they never trained for it. That's where Stoicism steps in, not as some abstract philosophy, but as a battle-tested framework for building inner stability in a world you don't control. Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor and wartime decision-maker, once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Now apply that to modern leadership. When Howard Schultz returned to Starbucks in 2008, the brand was bleeding, overextended, overcomplicated, and losing customer trust. He didn't chase hype. He shut down 7,100 stores for retraining, refocused the mission, and rebuilt from the core. What was that? Firm purpose over short-term panic, inner discipline over external noise. Or take Satya Nadella, who stepped into Microsoft's CEO role with the company losing cultural relevance. Instead of trying to beat Apple at hardware, he reframed the company around cloud-first innovation and empathy-driven leadership. That shift? Pure Stoicism in motion, perception, discipline, and direction. Stoicism teaches you to anchor yourself in what you control, your thoughts, your judgment, your decisions, to prepare mentally for setbacks, so when they come, you don't flinch, you respond, to find clarity amidst chaos, even when you feel the world is watching for you to fail. This isn't about being robotic. It's about training your mind like a muscle so that when pressure hits, you don't collapse. You lead. So the question isn't if the storm will come. The real question is, will your mindset be strong enough when it does? That's the difference between reacting like everyone else and leading like the few who rise. Number 5, reframe offense into opportunity. No one tells you this, but the moment that truly tests your leadership isn't when things go wrong. It's when someone makes it personal, a public jab, a backhanded comment, a deliberate slight in front of your team. And just like that, the game shifts from strategic to emotional. Now you're not thinking like a leader, you're reacting like a wounded version of yourself. But the Stoics had a warning for this. If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about it. Marcus Aurelius. In other words, the insult isn't the problem. How you choose to receive it is. Consider Rosalind Brewer, former CEO of Walgreens Boots Alliance. When she stepped into her leadership role, she faced criticism not just for business decisions, but for being a Black woman in a Fortune 500 boardroom. Instead of reacting defensively, she elevated the conversation. She spoke openly about inclusion, rebuilt internal culture, and realigned Walgreens' strategy around innovation and health equity. She transformed offense into impact. Or look at Tim Cook, who took over Apple after Steve Jobs and was met with constant skepticism. Not visionary enough, too soft, just an operations guy. But Cook didn't respond with bluster. He led with results, expanded Apple's services, grew market value beyond $3 trillion, and became a quiet symbol of strength through restraint. That's Stoicism in modern leadership. It's not about ignoring the offense, it's about owning your response with discipline, composure, and strategic clarity. In today's business world, where leaders are constantly under scrutiny, emotional control is more than personal virtue. It's professional leverage. You can't control critics. You can control whether their words shape your next decision or bounce off your sense of purpose. So here's the real test. Can you take the hit and still move with grace? I'd love to know. When was the last time you turned criticism into composure? Drop your story in the comments. It might just become someone else's playbook for staying grounded under fire. Number 6. Anticipate the storm. Most people think great leadership is about reacting quickly, having the answer, fixing the fire, jumping into action. But in reality, the most composed leaders aren't just reactive, they're prepared. Not because they're pessimists, but because they've already rehearsed the storm. Epictetus taught, "The greater the difficulty, the more glory in surmounting it." Skillful pilots gain their reputation from storms and tempests. That isn't just metaphor, it's a mindset. It's the quiet preparation no one sees that makes you unshakable when it counts. Consider Arne Sorensen, the late CEO of Marriott International. Well before COVID-19 devastated the hospitality industry, Sorensen had already led Marriott through major acquisitions, economic downturns, and cultural shifts. But during the pandemic, while the industry was collapsing, Sorensen made a decision most CEOs wouldn't. He cut his own salary to zero. He addressed employees directly in a raw, emotional video, not with panic, but with presence. His calm wasn't accidental, it was trained. He'd already prepared himself to face disruption with grace. Or look at Reed Hastings, co-founder of Netflix. When Blockbuster laughed them out of the room in 2000, Hastings didn't retaliate, he anticipated. He knew that the shift to streaming wouldn't be if, but when. He built the infrastructure, the culture, and the mindset around change. So when disruption came, Netflix was ready, while others froze. That wasn't genius, that was Stoic foresight. In Stoicism, this is called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. Not to dwell on what could go wrong, but to mentally rehearse it. So when it does, your nervous system doesn't flinch. You stay clear, you stay calm, you lead. If your leadership is constantly shaken by surprises, the problem isn't the surprise. It's that you haven't built the mental muscle to meet it. So ask yourself, what are the 3 biggest disruptions that could shake your world this year? Now, how would the Stoic version of you prepare for them? And if you've ever anticipated chaos before it hit and turned it into opportunity, drop your story below. You might just show another leader that the storm doesn't have to sink you if you've trained for it. Number 7, claim your power. I once knew someone who ran a $500 million company and almost let one email destroy his confidence. It wasn't a scandal. It wasn't a financial loss. It was a sharp, passive-aggressive message from a board member, questioning his decision, his competence, even his character. He didn't sleep for 2 nights, not because the critique was true, but because he believed it might be. And that's how most damage happens in leadership. Not from what's said, but from what we choose to internalize. Epictetus once wrote, "It is not he who reviles or strikes you who insults you, but your opinion that these things are insulting." And once my client understood that, everything changed. He rewrote the narrative. Instead of spiraling, he responded with clarity and courage, not to defend his ego, but to realign the mission. 6 months later, that same board member became his strongest supporter. Why? Because he didn't flinch. You see it in public leaders too. When Ken Frazier, then CEO of Merck, stepped down from Trump's manufacturing council, the backlash was swift. But Frazier didn't posture. He didn't escalate. He held his ground and his principles with quiet strength. The public saw it. So did the business world. Or consider Susan Wojcicki at YouTube. Under relentless scrutiny, from political pressure to algorithm failures, she didn't cave or lash out. She stayed transparent, acknowledged what needed fixing, and led through it all. That's not weakness. That's practiced Stoic resilience. Leadership will expose you, but what you allow in, that's your decision. You can take the hit and not carry the wound. Number 8, reject the shame trap. Most people think that shame only comes from failure, that it only belongs to the leaders who lost. But the truth, some of the most successful executives carry shame, not because they fell, but because they tied their self-worth to outcomes they couldn't fully control, a deal gone sideways, a public backlash, a personal mistake that outlived the headlines. And when that shame isn't processed, it lingers, quietly, internally, fatally. Seneca warned us of this. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality, because the event isn't what breaks us, it's the narrative we construct afterward. Look at Mary Barra, CEO of General Motors. She stepped into leadership just as a defect scandal rocked the company. Over 100 lives lost. She could have buried it under PR spin. Instead, she took full responsibility, led from the front, and initiated deep systemic reforms in GM's safety culture. That moment didn't define her by shame. It revealed her moral backbone. Or take Brian Chesky, co-founder of Airbnb. In 2020, when the travel economy collapsed, Chesky had to lay off a quarter of his workforce. But he didn't hide. He wrote one of the most dignified and human layoff letters in Silicon Valley's history. Not to justify, but to honor. That choice transformed a painful pivot into a lasting leadership example. Here's the Stoic insight. Shame doesn't come from failure. It comes from forgetting who you are when things fall apart. The solution isn't to suppress it. It's to confront it, reframe it, and lead through it with courage, not concealment. In the Stoic playbook, the bravest thing a leader can say isn't, "I'm perfect." It's, "I own this." So let me ask you, was there ever a moment you carried shame and chose to lead anyway? Share your story below, because someone else might be waiting to do the same, but needs to see it's possible. Number 9, restraint is power. Let me guess. You've been in a moment where your heart was racing, your jaw clenched, and you knew exactly what you wanted to say. Maybe it was in a boardroom. Maybe it was on a Zoom call where someone publicly disrespected you. Or maybe it was in your own home, your teenager pushing every button, and you felt yourself right on the edge. We've all been there. And what separates the leader from the reactor is what happens in that one breath before the reply. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." True freedom, especially in leadership, doesn't mean doing whatever you want. It means having the strength to not do what you'll regret. Take Dara Khosrowshahi, the CEO who stepped into Uber's firestorm. He inherited a brand stained by scandal and internal dysfunction. But he didn't take the stage to blame or to boast. He chose his words with surgical calm. Even when critics came hard, he didn't flinch. He paused, responded with clarity, rebuilt trust, one restrained response at a time. That's what Stoicism looks like in real life. Not silence, but strategic control. And you don't need to be in Silicon Valley to feel it. It's when a team member questions your leadership in front of others. It's when a partner throws a personal jab in the middle of a contract dispute. It's that moment where your instinct screams, "Say something." But instead, you breathe, you own your state, and you speak only what serves your mission. That one pause, that's where legacy lives. So let me ask you, when was the last time you paused and everything changed? Drop your story below, because your moment of restraint might be the very insight another leader needs to stay grounded in their most volatile moment. Number 10, accept reality, then act. Let me guess. You're the one everyone looks to when things go wrong. You're the steady hand, the strategist, the fixer. But what happens when you're the one who gets lost? Not physically, but emotionally. That moment when the roadmap disappears, the numbers don't add up, and the pressure starts whispering, maybe you're not as strong as they think. I once spoke with a COO who built a logistics empire from scratch. Then, in one quarter, global supply chains collapsed. Everything spiraled: revenue, morale, investor confidence. He sat alone in his office one night and whispered to himself, "I don't know what to do." And for the first time in 20 years, he felt ashamed. But then he remembered something he had read from Marcus Aurelius. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That one line changed his course, not because it offered a tactical solution, but because it returned his focus to the only thing he could control, his next move. He didn't deny reality, he accepted it. Then he made calls, rallied the team, cut what needed cutting, communicated like a human, not a machine. And within 2 quarters, they weren't just surviving, they were innovating. That's the power of acceptance. It's not resignation, it's clarity. And you've likely felt this too, maybe not in business, but in life. Like when a friend ghosted you without reason, when the deal you counted on fell through, when the doctor gave you a diagnosis you weren't ready for. That feeling of, this can't be happening. But Stoicism doesn't ask you to like it, it asks you to face it. Because the moment you stop fighting reality, you start reclaiming your ability to act. Seneca put it this way, a gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. So what about you? What's one moment where you stopped resisting and finally moved forward? Your story might be the light someone else needs when their roadmap disappears. In the end, business will test your strategy, but life will test your soul. And when everything feels uncertain, the market, the people, even your next step, you'll find that your real edge isn't another tactic. It's the quiet discipline to stay centered, to respond with purpose, not panic, to lead, even when no one's cheering. Because calm isn't weakness, it's proof you've done the inner work. So before you go, take a breath, reflect on one moment that shaped you, not when you won, but when you didn't flinch. If this message spoke to something in you, pass it on. Hit like, subscribe, or share this with someone who carries more than they show, and tell us in the comments. Which Stoic truth do you want to carry into the week ahead? Your voice might be the reminder another leader needs right now.